what was the first, here we go. What was the first time that you thought about photography?
Ooh, that's a good. I haven't been asked this in a really long time.
Oh, yeah.
I would say actually, like when I was younger, I was always placed in rooms like from my mom and my brother
Mm-hmm.
who were like very artistic. My brother's a musician as well.
Nice.
So I was always placed in like very creative rooms, but I wasn't I was an athlete. I was raised as an athlete.
Okay.
And so aside from that, I really wanted to step out of that very boxy athletic kind of title. And so I started dabbling into other art forms, and that's when I decided to kind of dabble into photography.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward years and years later, of course, that was when I was like can use my fingers and stuff. But then once I kind of like grew up essentially and saw what the real world was like,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of realized that no matter what I do, I always went back to photography. Whether it was on vacation, whether it was like a hobby wise, it was always photography at the end of the day. And then I realized that, oh, this could be like a thing. Like I can actually make this my thing. And so I started trying to find my niche and find my storytelling abilities through it.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of what drew me further in, just capturing my friends, capturing vacations, and leading into capturing stories like proposals and people trying to be more confident and, you know, surprise maternity, you know, things like that. So that kind of led into my passion and love for photography and telling stories.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. What sport did you play?
So I started out as soccer. I was a very soccer baby.
Gotcha.
My grandfather trained with the junior Argentina team in Argentina.
Oh, that's sick.
So he was super cool. And so growing up, he was like, well, you're the first grandkid, so I'm gonna teach you everything I know. So I was like little Messi is what they called me since my family's from Argentina.
Oh, that's
So
tough.
playing soccer my entire life until I was about 10, I like my attention span kind of like shifted, and I was like, okay, let me try everything else. So then from there I did softball. I did a little bit of martial arts, which is half a sport, half not. I did dance, which is also controversially a sport. And then I also did flag football for about 3 years in high school.
Oh, that's
So
tough.
it was super fun. So I was definitely into that, but then out, like, you know, I'd come home from like a super stressful practice or a super stressful game, and then I would just take pictures of stuff, or I'd bring my camera and be like, hey, while I'm out, you know, just taking pictures on the side and like trying to be more artistic. So those were kind of the sports I dabbled in, but
Gotcha. Now
Yeah.
you said that throughout life, like you always went back to photography.
Mhm.
Were there things that interested you other than photography that you wanted to go into as far as work, or was it just like living
Mhm.
life and I guess photography just made sense?
Yeah. It actually originally started with painting. I really loved painting.
Oh, okay.
I can't do like realistic, like if you tell me like draw, you know, an alligator with a t-shirt, I probably wouldn't be able to off the top. But I really loved like taking general photos and like what I saw and like creating it more in different medias. But then I realized that it wasn't something that I could find peace in, if that makes sense. Like I loved doing it on my own, but not for others. And so that kind of deterred me away from doing it for a career. And then I dabbled into dance, which I currently still do alongside photography. But when I dance, it's more of like an expression and kind of like just like to let it out. And of course there are really great career paths for that. It's just a lot more saturated and very specific and very who you know and what you know. So it wasn't unrealistic for me, but it was definitely in that time something that I didn't see in my path, I guess.
Okay.
So I guess those things pushed me back to photography because it felt like I could not only do it for myself but do it for others, and it just allowed me to create a community. And I actually, most of my clients started out as dance clients, so I kind of like intertwine those things. And so while I'm doing my dance and expressing in that way, I'm also expressing in the way that my consumerism, I guess, could
Definitely.
really enjoy.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so started off in sports,
Yeah.
and then you kept going back to photography.
Mm-hmm.
What was the transition from high school to college like for you? Like, why did you choose Full Sail, and
Mhm.
then like what did you get from it?
Yeah, that's actually a funny story because my senior year in high school, I was very like, I wasn't a popular person like in high school, but I also wasn't like super to myself and like away from everyone. Like I knew a lot of people and a lot of people knew me, but I wasn't necessarily like titled in a specific group.
Gotcha.
I did some clubs, but you know, being involved in that kind of like, I never really had like my people. I was just kind of going to school doing things and, you know, athleticism and things. But my senior year, like the last 6 months, everyone was like, so where are you going to go? Like, who would you do? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I have to apply places. Like I have to actually do something with my life.
For sure.
And it was funny because the day that I was like in just such a down mood, I like went into one of my classes and Full Sail was going around and like sharing what students have done. And you know how like in high school, I don't know if anyone else's high school did it, but mine would have like different schools come in like a tour bus, and they would come and like demo their school and like what they had. It was really weird.
No, that sounds cool though.
It was super cool. It was like a college career fair kind of vibe.
Gotcha.
And so Full Sail had a bus there, and they had some games that students created in school. But Full Sail was promoting more of like the film, the gaming, and the music. So I didn't feel like I could fit in it, and I was like super deterred. But it piqued my interest. So then after school, I, just kind of thought about it. And then once it got closer and closer to the end of the high school year, I called Full Sail and I was like, listen, y'all look cool, but like, is this all you do? Or like, what else can they do? And at that time, they had just begun this program called Media Communications, which was all about learning different tools in the media world and then applying it to whatever was going on. So I was like, cool, sign me up. I'll sign right now. And so after lots of time, I did it kind of just jumping into a pool, not having any like knowledge of financial backing or what was going to happen. I was like, I didn't even live in Orlando. I lived in Tampa. So I was like, I'll figure it out.
Were you driving every day?
Yeah.
Oh my God,
At first
dude.
I was, and luckily I was housed by like a family friend who was like is elderly. So I said, okay, here, I'll help you with your things as long as you let me live in your other bedroom, guest room. So she was super great. Her name was Pat. We love her. And so I lived with her for a while. But then COVID happened, and that like really hurt my degree program. Everything was like super online. But when I started, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I just didn't know how I was going to do it. Like I wanted to do photography regardless. I wanted to content create. I wanted to be within social media because at that time it was really progressing. TikTok was just made for Musical.ly. So a lot of good things were coming and I wanted to be in the loop. So I think that was what really set it off. And that transition was like more of like a jump into a freezing cold pool and hope that it warms up. Like that was definitely, I guess, a metaphor I would say that describes that transition, because it wasn't smooth, but it wasn't,
No, for sure.
Yeah.
So how many years did you spend at Full Sail?
I was in their extended program. So they're extended about 29 months. So I would say, let's do the math.
29 months.
A little less than 3 years, so like 2.5 years.
Super
So I chose the extended because if it wasn't, it would be like 2 or 3 classes a month, which was super stressful for me, especially driving back and forth.
Yeah.
So I did the extended program, and it actually allowed me to pace myself really nicely.
Definitely.
And then when COVID happened, it was definitely a lot better because I got to like rest and not feel stressed about all that good stuff.
For sure. Now, were you working while you were going to school?
I was.
Gotcha. Were you working in photography or no?
No, I wasn't actually. I was working at like this optical office as like a receptionist. It was actually from the elderly woman I worked with, because she was like, I just went to the eyeglass place and they were looking for a receptionist. And I'm like, okay, sure. Like I need something. I didn't know anyone in Orlando other than her and my uncle who lived out here. And so I was like, okay, cool, let me go. So I started working there, and then about a year and a half in, I ended up starting an internship at a local studio in downtown Orlando. So luckily I did find an internship through there, but all of my photography and creativeness was at school. So
Gotcha.
it was like opto office and then creative at school. It was awful, but it was temporary. So
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about like the degree that you got and whether it does or does not apply to what you do today. I don't know anything about that program.
Yeah.
So give me some more about that.
It's definitely newer. I think it's like 8 or 9 years old now.
Okay.
But it's called Media Communications. And so everyone has a different explanation for it. So if you have someone else in MCBS or Media Communications, they will definitely tell you a different, definition.
Gotcha.
But what I got from it is they give you all the tools and you decide what to build. And so they kind of teach you every month. They teach you something different. I learned a lot about audio. I learned a lot about video and cinematography. I learned a lot about creating websites, creating graphic designs, photography, portraiture, a lot of like rule of thirds, a lot of art history, all those
Gotcha.
kinds of things. I just chose to take it in the photography side, but I had a lot of students like right beside me that decided to do marketing analytics and decided to go more number side, or they did graphic design and create logos for different companies or marketing tools. One of my closest friends who graduated with me does a lot of like marketing and ad materials. So it also depends like what you decide to build with it, but they
Gotcha.
do give you all the tools. You get the entire Adobe suite. You get like
that's
all
dope.
the instructors have like actual careers and different paths. Like one of the main instructors, she builds websites for different companies and different small businesses, so things like that. But aside from that, I really enjoyed the degree program because I felt like everyone referred you to someone that would match what you're interested in.
Okay.
So if I always expressed how much I loved photography, I just didn't know what niche I wanted to go in. And someone would be like, okay, well, I do have an event that needs a photographer. You want to try that? And you kind of dabble into that. And it's really great to connect and create like a community in whichever field you want to.
Got you. So when I was in high school, just to give you some context about me,
Yeah.
I was a musical theater kid. So I went to college for musical theater.
Yeah.
And then I like fell into a production job.
Mm-hmm.
I've always done video and photo throughout my whole life. I wanted to be a YouTuber growing up.
Yeah.
So I had a bunch of cameras saved up for everything. But when it came to like the business side of things, I never knew what questions to ask. I was always super confused. I didn't know who to go to, where to go, what website to look at, and what was like truth, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have that similar experience, but if you were talking to somebody who's younger today, what questions would you tell them to ask, or like what direction would you point them to go?
Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely agree, because I was also in that state of like, I wanted to do this, but then completely steered away. I also wanted to be more of like, I wanted to be famous was like the key word when I was younger. Like, I just want to be famous, but obviously we don't know what comes with fame, especially YouTube fame.
Exactly.
But aside from that, I would say like, if I were talking to my younger self, the questions I would ask is more so just like, what rooms did you like get in, or what ways were you trying to find out things from your community? Because I know it sounds very cliche, but like your community really does help, and like the people that you know really will open those doors for you. You know, especially now in a place of like a lot of saturated artists who, you know, think they can just pick up a camera and say like, oh, I'm a photographer, or like, oh, I do video, I do cinema. And it's very different, because, you know, someone like you who does, you know, cinematography and actually does video and does really great work.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. You know, like things like that. It's really hard to like see someone with a first grade camera, I guess, and they're just like, yeah, I'm a videographer. And it happens with like photo, it happens with, you know, musicians and things like that. It's always, you know, like seeing things like that. So as someone, you know, if I'm, like I said, if I'm talking to my younger self, I think the best thing to say or to ask would be like, you know, ask them what kind of rooms, like where can I go to get a seat at the table? Where can I go to ask great questions? Who can I speak to that would be like of good use and information and of wisdom? Because then they will guide you and see like, oh, you know what, you're so passionate about what you do, let me bring you into this room. So I think that'd probably be what I'd say. I'm like blanking a little bit,
it's
but
all good. Let me jump in here. You mentioned that it's about your community and the people that you have around you. Is there someone or some ones in your circle that have like really impacted where you're at today?
Absolutely, 1,000%. I guess the first person would be my boyfriend. He might be present here today. He might not, but maybe. But no, when we first met, his friends connected me to his music group, and they really helped me shape kind of what direction I was going in. Of course, as a young artist, you just think like, oh, fun, take pictures, like let's post everywhere. You don't think of like the actual adulting part of it. So it was really nice to not only, you know, of course, meet my amazing partner in crime in that, but also understand like what the real life brings. The group's called Lucid Entertainment, and they're like a record label. They're now located in Georgia, in Miami, in different parts of the US. So they have a lot of really great artists, and they've really impacted who I am as an artist, because they allowed me to sit in the room like, hey, I need an album cover. I've never done an album cover before, but you know, photo, let's figure it out together. And we would sit down and we would workshop, and it allowed me to create my style and who Ari is as a photographer. So I would say that definitely jump started. I think I joined their group when I was about 20, and I'm 24 now. So, you know, having that knowledge and having that connection, knowing that they'll always be there to like support me in that community. And, you know, I always put them in rooms and vice versa. So they definitely helped me for sure. I would say, of course, my Full Sail community, like my degree program and the friends that I've made there, they're always so supportive. And I was actually able to speak in like a panel for them in the degree program and talk about my experience outside of school and what I've done since I graduated. I graduated Full Sail in 2022, so it's been a couple years. So it's been really nice to talk to my community, be around them, and know that they're always going to be there for me, and like look back and see how much they've really impacted me. Because, you know, in that time, of course, you're figuring things out. So there's a lot of like hardships, you know, when you're building stuff, things will fall down. Definitely. And things happen. And, you know, there was a lot of altercation, disagreement, but it really pushed me to be who I am today and allow our connection to be stronger, because we went through the hardships together. So I think that would be,
For sure.
Yeah.
So with the panel, kind of going back to like the thing that you would tell your younger self, what were some of the questions that were asked of you today?
Yeah, actually, one of the ones that I thought were really great was like, as artists, we have imposter syndrome. We have a lot of imposter syndrome when it comes to our equipment, maybe like the money we're making, the kind of clients we're having, the rooms that we're allowing to be in, or the rooms that we're asking to be in, like denying ourselves that we might not even be like worthy of being in the space with these kinds of people in this kind of environment. So that question was like, how did you push through that when you graduated and things like that? For me, I haven't pushed through it. I still have my imposter syndrome moments, and I think that's all natural when it comes to being an artist.
For sure.
But I think aside from the community and such, I think reminding yourself that regardless if you know it or not, you can learn it, and you can open the door to accepting, hey, like, I know of it, but show me more because I want to learn from you and I want to be there. It's okay to not know something, but it's even better if you want to learn about it and be open to that. There have been rooms that, you know, I got to capture like really big nonprofit events. I think the one that I did, I've done so many. The one that I did recently was called Night to Shine. And it's like this really big Tim Tebow sponsored event for special needs kids and adults and whoever to come and have like a night of dancing and fun and like a prom.
Oh, nice.
And it's a nonprofit. And at first, you know, they were paying me super little, but they were super like, we really want you to come. And like Tim Tebow was going to be there and like big names were going to be there. And I was like, do I even deserve to like be in this room with Tim Tebow? Like, I don't even know like what to do as an athlete. I was like, I don't know if I should be here, but even going like, I've returned twice already, and it's just been so lovely because I said yes, and I just kind of jumped into that fire and didn't allow the fear of not feeling worthy in that moment, and being open to learning and saying like, hey, I got this shot, what do you think about it, that kind of thing. In the photography realm.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually had a guy named Will. He's a video producer for the Orlando Magic, and I asked him a very similar question, and he said that being coachable has been the most valuable part of his journey in his career. Being able to listen to somebody who is smarter than you or just know something a little bit more about whatever, and being willing to take action on that. I know that's something I used to struggle with. I used to want to know everything, and so when I was told that I was wrong, I had an ego about it.
I do too, yes.
But eventually, like when you finally let that ego go, you can start getting in rooms with Tim Tebow, you know what I mean, and shooting stuff that you didn't think you were going to shoot before. And I think the imposter syndrome thing, it's an interesting dynamic that I have in my mind because I feel like I'm very, very fortunate in all the things that I get to do, all the people I get to shoot for, all the situations I get to be in. But I don't know where the line is of like, when does it go away? Does it ever go away?
I don't think it'll ever go away, to be honest. I think you're always going to be your hardest critic of like being super hard on yourself. Like, okay, this shot is good, but I know I could have done better, or like things like that. And I think also another thing that I've also told myself is that I don't have to always compare myself. I can learn from it. And, you know, I am the hardest person on myself because I see a photo and I'm like, why didn't I think of that? Like, oh my gosh, like now it's going to look like I'm copying them, but like I really love this. And instead of like comparing and being like, okay, well, I didn't do this and they did something really cool, you can say like, well, I'm inspired by it. Maybe I can reach out to them, see how they did it, learn how they do it. Because honestly, like, not to be conceited, but a lot of people like to talk about themselves, and a lot of people like to share what they know and feel knowledgeable and like they're helping. And I feel like you'd have a better chance just asking and learning than being in a bubble and like being within yourself. But I always say it's going to happen regardless. You're always going to be your hardest critic no matter what, and it'll just become less loud, if that makes sense.
For sure. So I do want to ask you a question about the wedding photography.
Go for it.
First of all, incredible work.
Thank you.
I show your work to my girlfriend all the time. Like, this is the stuff that I want when we get married. I promise you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever dealt with a client that hasn't been a fan of something that you've sent them?
Yes.
And how do you deal with that?
Yes. Well, this kind of happened in the beginning of like creating my business and creating my company before I even had a photo team or a video team brought on and like more things added. So it was like very base level. My contract was very much like, sign here if you want to book me. Like, it was very like 3 sentences, you agree if you sign here kind of thing. And that specific client, I told her, I said, if you're booking me, you're booking my aesthetic, you're booking me as a person, you're booking my style, and understand that you are my second client entirely, like pretty much second or third. And she was like, yep, perfect, sign here. And after the wedding, it was so hard because that wedding everything was going wrong, but it was out of our control. It was pouring rain. Like it was, I think he was with us too, doing it, but it was pouring rain outside. It was super dark. Like, the wedding was inside. She had neon purple lights everywhere, and then outside it was like yellow lights. It was awful. And we did the best we could. We were doing just photo, and her family was super fun. But then once I sent the gallery, I told her, I said, this wedding, I saw it as very timeless because I like to adapt to the couple really. And it was giving like timeless, rich money kind of like vibes. Gotcha. So when I sent it to her, she was like, I hate it. Like just right off she's like, so I looked at it. It's nice, but like I hate it. And I was like, okay, what can I do? And of course at that point my ego was like to the ground. I was like, okay, well, you know what? Like I don't, trying to not to be mean, but I ended up just asking like, okay, well, what is it that you don't like about it? Is it the kind of angles I may have gotten? Is there something that you didn't like maybe on you, the way that I posed you? Was it the editing? Luckily in that situation, it was just the editing.
Gotcha.
So I was able to, do a couple of mock-ups and say, okay, here's some mock-ups. I'd be generous to complimentary, re-edit some, especially since you're one of my first clients. I want you to be happy. Yeah. I still kept it in my style, but she definitely was like, I wanted more of like a moody, because I did them a little brighter. So things like that. And when it comes to hard clients or honestly anyone I'm collaborating with, even if it's for free or even if it's just like a trade-off, I always make sure they know, like, you're not just collaborating with me, like you're collaborating with my aesthetic, my vision, and I'm gonna respect you as long as you respect me back. I don't mind taking extra pictures. I don't mind doing a different angle. I don't mind showing you even in the middle of doing it, as long as like you understand that I'm creating based off of my eyes and my heart and my vision. And of course I'll always respect that. So yes, she wasn't the only one. I had a couple of other ones, but she was probably the hardest one because that wedding, I think we took about like 800 photos, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have 800 photos to re-edit completely, it was definitely stressful, but I think that's probably the hardest. And it did hurt my ego for sure, because I was like, so I'm not the best photographer ever? Okay, thanks.
Wow.
But it was definitely a learning curve for me.
So where do you draw the line with that? Because I know that for me, I'm very similar. Like I have a style and I have an aesthetic that I like to go for. Tyler, we've had this conversation before in our business, and he's very much of the whatever the client wants, which I think is probably with what we do is the more appropriate way to approach things. Yeah. But I'm a little, I guess my ego drives me a lot. So where do you draw the line between what the client wants and then what you want to give?
I think with photo wise, like within myself, I always, like I said, I always start off by saying like, you're booking me, like as a person, as an artist. And that is always subjective to like what I think is right and what I think would be perfect. Now, of course, I always ask questions like, what is it that you want out of this? Do you want something more on the documentary side? Do you want something more clean and crisp? Do you want something moodier, darker, brighter? Because my style is honestly kind of mixed. I just like a pop of color. So like a lot of my style is like pop of color, bold and like clean and crisp. I've been leaning more into the documentary side, which is like very muted depending on the vibe. Yeah. But with that, I draw the line in the sense of like, you can't, how do I say this without sounding crazy? Like, you can't tell me what to do if you're choosing me, like you're not booking me to work for you. Yeah. You know what I mean? I know that sounds crazy because I mean, technically I'm doing the service and working, to create something for them, but I'm not working for you. I'm creating something for you. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that I can't make any adjustments. It just means that if you're picking, like if you're going to pick like Van Gogh, for example, I know he's, like not present, but if you're going to pick a Van Gogh painting, you're not going to tell Van Gogh to paint it in a different style because you're buying Van Gogh or Banksy. Like if you want a Banksy art, like painting, you're going to get a Banksy painting. You're not going to get it in like a watercolor kind of vibe. For sure. And I feel like it's the same way with photography. And then with videography, it was a little harder when I brought on my video team because they did have like some issues with that of like, well, I want it to be traditional. Well, I want it to be fun. But I think with them, and collaborating with me, they've taught me a lot of like, okay, well, you can have a baseline of like, okay, I'm going to be bold in color. I'm going to be more cinematic, more documentary style. And I'm going to have a mix of the necessities, like the pretty posed ones, but I'm also going to have my creative ones to show you that we can take it all, but it's us, if that makes sense. Definitely. So I wouldn't say there's like a definite line. I would just definitely say that the line, I guess, is if you're booking me, you're getting me. You're not going to get what you would create because you're asking me as an artist to create for you. Definitely. If that makes sense.
For sure. So I guess the next question for me would be is are weddings what you want to be doing? Is that like the, not the end goal per se, but is that like where you're at right now, or is there other stuff that you wish that you had coming at you?
Yeah, weddings are my they're my niche right now, and I do love them. It's not that I don't love them at all. I love weddings, and I love capturing story, and all of that is like part of what I want to do.
Yeah.
I think it's not so much just the weddings itself. I think it's like the style of which I take it. I like to do a lot of documentary, a lot of like editorial style, and like moody editorial storytelling kind of style. And so whenever I do weddings, I try and like mold based on the client and based on the couple themselves, like ways to incorporate that. Weddings can honestly be my end all be all. I don't necessarily have a, this is what I'm going to be, or this is what I want to do. Yeah. But my passion in photography is rooted from editorial, a lot of fashion, a lot of like high end, like magazine photography, or editorial. So I love capturing that, but it really does tie into the storytelling. So, of course, my dream, not out of the loop, but definitely in the path, I definitely want to work in editorial and magazine and publication in regard to, fashion, high-end fashion weeks, just a lot of like really nice style, working with stylists, working with just very fun and different kind of posing. And right now, although I do weddings as my priority and my main, I do tie it in as best as I can without being like, do a backflip for the pic, so I do try and tie it in together, but I think weddings are what I do now, and it fuels me. And I'm trying to tie it into like the artistic side, in which I want to get to at some point.
Super sweet. So getting to the fun part, the business side of things. So you mentioned that you have a video team, and obviously, are you the lead photographer for you guys? Okay. And do you have multiple photographers, or is it just you?
Yeah, I have more. I like to call them collaborators. Gotcha. So I don't necessarily have like employees that work like 9 to 5 every day editing. I'm mainly the head of it until I branch out. It's definitely going up. But right now I'm the lead photographer editor, and then my collaborators come as I need. If I need a second shooter, if I need someone to like associate capture for me, that kind of thing. But yeah, so technically I'm the lead
Gotcha.
for everyone.
And then has there, okay, I'll phrase it like this. I've always struggled with pricing myself, because there's a part of me that really wants to do the work, and then there's a part of me that really needs to pay rent.
Right.
So where is that line for you? And then how do you balance the work that you want to do and the work that you have to get paid for?
With the video team, I'll start by saying that like I allow them to charge what they feel is best, because I know video enough to get me by. I'm very helpful when it comes to my video team and stuff, but I like to make sure that everyone feels that they're getting paid and working for what they're worth. Pricing was also very hard for me. It was like I would price something and they're like, wow, you're charging way too less, and then I'd bump it up, based on hours or whatever, and then they'd say, wow, that's a lot for where you're doing, or like I can't afford that. And so it was really discouraging. So it was very hard for me too. I would say my pricing is based on my demographic, like where I'm at, because where I live, a lot of the couples that get married there are smaller. Like they do elopements, they do courthouse weddings, or they'll do like a small park kind of thing. So of course I'm not going to charge $10,000. And if someone does, that's power to them. But for me, my crowd is definitely smaller, so I charge, I don't want to say a little less, because I definitely charge what I'm worth. But it did take a little bit, because again, like getting different responses kind of like geared me to that. But I would say my pricing is based off of the hours that I work. I basically, all my packages are the same when it comes to weddings. Gotcha. The only difference is the time. Now, of course, the lowest package has a little less than what the middle and top tier one is. For sure. But I try to do it in packages, because one thing that I've learned is that when people, it's not so much people spending the money, it's that people are trusting that their money is worth it. So whenever I was pricing, it's not so much like, okay, like, well, I need $5,000 right now, for this 8-hour wedding. It was more so like, okay, well, here's what's included in my package, and this is what I'm charging. So when they see, wow, I'm getting 100 more things than I'm getting over here for the same price, you kind of get that feel of like, okay, it's worth this amount, even if it's a high number. So I try to do that. I try and make my clients comfortable, and I'm always there to answer questions and things like that. So I guess creating the price was more so figuring out what my demographic liked, what their what's more commonly wanted and demanded,
Gotcha.
and then kind of pricing from there, and like, okay, well, how much am I worth for this many hours? What kind of gear am I bringing? Does this include a second person, or does this include video? Do I need to talk to video team? Kind of like seeing my surroundings and then feeling comfortable and finding a number that fits within that.
Gotcha. And then how are you like getting clients, just in general?
Honestly, most of my clients began by word of mouth,
Okay.
because I didn't have that strong of a portfolio or that strong of like a visual in the beginning. So a lot of it was like my cover artwork with like the artists that I work with, and a lot of my work was that. And so getting a wedding was like super difficult.
Gotcha.
But I guess to get the client, I was working with photographers and learning from them and building from being a second photographer for a lot of events. And then from there, once I started posting it, a lot of my clients were either DMing me saying like, oh, so-and-so sent me, they said you're a photographer, what, you know, blah, blah, blah. Or I like to go to a lot of like networking events in like
Gotcha.
the area. So, or doing nonprofits, like I was saying before, you know, I've met a lot of my clients, or a lot of people that knew clients that they could refer me there. And then the networking events that I would go to, it was a lot of, you know, talking to different women or men and seeing like what would be best. Because, you know, it's usually the women that book me, because they're like, I'm forcing my husband to do this, or I'm forcing my fiance, or their fiance will come to, or their boyfriend or whatever will come to me and say like, so I'm surprisingly proposing someone, like, you know, that kind of thing. So I would say it started off with word of mouth, and then from there it became a lot of like showing up to places, being in different rooms, and then from there just posting, so that when they do open my Facebook or Instagram or my portfolio website, they see a lot of different things and they're like, ooh, booking page, great, awesome, like, let's talk.
Sweet.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit before we started, and you mentioned that you were traveling a little bit more for some clients. What has been your favorite place that you've been to?
Oh, that's a hard one. I would say more recent, because I've been quite a few places, but I'd say my favorite, most recent place, me and my boyfriend, because he's the leader of the videography team.
Okay.
And so we got booked for a surprise proposal on a cruise. And it was to the Bahamas. So I guess I would say, like, you know, the Bahamas is great. We love it there.
Yeah.
But the proposal happened on the boat. So I think that was probably the coolest place.
Oh, that's dope.
But what happened was we got booked, and they paid for our trip as well as our services doing it. And so we got on the boat, and it was like in the middle of the ocean, like sunset perfectly. The couple was doing karaoke, and he like proposed. And after that, I was like, I don't know who's gonna top this. Like, I know this, we're not geographically anywhere, but like this is so great. Like, you saw the sunset, it was like blue, and like it was like 3 rows of people watching. It was so cool. So I would say that's probably like the coolest place. Aside from that, you know, we've been to Mexico doing a couple things there. We do have some trips later on this year. I just recently got back from Pennsylvania doing like a maternity photo shoot. So little places within the U.S., but this year I'm actually branching outside of the U.S., so I'm really excited for that. But the cruise was definitely my top for now. Maybe later in the year I'll have a better answer.
All good.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about the relationship that you and Lucas have. Your boyfriend, he's
Yes.
the video lead, and I know that he also does music. So tell me a little bit more about that.
I love talking about him, of course. So when we first met, I see him blushing over there in the corner. When we first met, not him shaking his head. When we first met, you know, we were more acquaintanced. You know, I was working with another artist in the group, and he was doing music, and we had a couple of other photographers and videographers on the music team, or in the music group, in the team. You got what I meant. But yeah, so we were doing that. So I was working with a couple other artists, and then once we collaborated on some of his songs and some of his album art, from there we kind of realized that it was like super simple. And at first we were like a little hesitant, because of course, you know, we liked each other, we wanted to go into it, but we didn't want to mix work with, you know, that kind of style. And so over time, it just felt more natural, and we really just domino affected. And then one day, I guess this was like the flame to the match, but one day he had a coworker that was like, hey, I'm getting married, and this is my budget. Do you have a photographer that'd be open to doing it? And at the time I was working at the photo studio, but I hadn't had anything outside of that. And so he was like, hey, so I'm going to be doing video for this. Would you be open to trying out doing photo? This is their budget. It'll be your first wedding. I know it's not a lot, but like, what do you think? And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And to this day, it's like our favorite wedding. We've worked together, like to the point that the couple was like, put your cameras down and dance with us. And we had a really good time. And then after that, we kind of like sat in the car and we were like, yeah, we can do this. Like, I think we're good. Like, I think, you know, and everyone was like, how long have you guys been together? And at that time we were like, no, today, actually, that's today. But after that, we were the ones that went to Mexico together and did all of that stuff and had some clients out there. And he did the cruise with me, of course. So I think from that point on, it's just so natural because we just sit down and like our brains just like fire back and forth. And from a video standpoint, I've learned so much from him because as a photographer, I wanted to go more, you know, of course, at that time, I wanted to go more into the documentary side. Yeah. And when I was doing that, it was really hard because I was so used to the studio I was working at, just like being there and like they were like clean, crisp, flash, like super posy. And I wanted to be more like, I'm not even here. You do your thing. I want to capture you guys. And so he really taught me how to do that because as a videographer, he's as well very much like that. Like, hey, like, yeah, let's pose, but let's also be in the moment. Let's run around. Let's look at each other. Let's dip her. Let's do all these things. And so I kind of helped him with like the posing side of like, okay, let's get them started and then we can run around and do crazy stuff. And then he was kind of like, okay, what about this shot? What about this angle? What about if we get a drone? What if we do this kind of editing? So for lack of a better term, he brought a lot of color into my life. So
that's super sweet.
Yeah. So I love it. And he's my favorite person to work with ever. So
tell me more about that. What is that like? Because I love my girlfriend to death, but we bicker all the time. I don't know that a working relationship, especially when it comes to like art, would work out between us. So how does that work for you guys?
We definitely bicker too, but at the end of the day, like kind of going back to what we were saying about like ego and like at first, you know, he would give me criticism in the nicest way possible, like, there, this is what I need to tell you. You're not a bad photographer. I just think you could do this, you know? And at first I was definitely like, please don't ever tell me anything about photography again. I was like, please don't. I was like, my ego is to the ground and I love you too much for you to like criticize me and make me feel so, you know, so dramatic. But over time, I've really learned to like accept it because I know that he knows me. Like, do you know what I mean? Like he knows my art. He knows what I'm trying to do. And if there's something that I want his advice on, or if there's something that he sees that could be better, he'd be like, that's good, but you can do better. Let's try it again. Like, let me help you in the moment, or even after, like, hey, this is good, but maybe try editing it this way, or try posing them this way this time. Or like, hey, that wasn't cool. Let's not do that again. Let's try maybe this way. So that way the client's more comfortable, you know, things like that. So at first it was definitely like a little bicker, and like he would say something and I'd be like, and I'd like walk away and like kind of sit in the corner. But now I love talking with him and getting his advice. And you know, the ego's still a little there. Sometimes I'll be like, okay, I need to take a 10-second lap, and I'll like do a little circle and, you know, recharge. But I know at the end of the day, he knows my vision and he understands me. And if he's saying something, it's not because he hates me and the world is ending. It's because he actually cares. And I hope, you know, I don't know, he's not here, but I hope that when it's the other way around, that he feels that way too. And that, you know, whether it's like how we're saying it to each other or when we're saying it to each other, that like, you know, we really do take that into consideration. So. Yeah.
So you're telling me that he helped you change your style, or not change it, but I guess like find your style a little
like
bit.
mold it a little bit. Yeah.
So tell me about the transition from working at the studio to finding like the more capturing life while it's living.
I will definitely say that transition was super hard because I would just always resort back to that. Always that like super clean, crisp, like smile, look over here, smile, look at each other. I had like that same 10 shot list in my head. And stepping out of that was really scary because I, you know, obviously people are booking me seeing that in my portfolio. And so they are expecting that. So I was super scared to step out of that. And, you know, outside of that, one of the things he would always say, well, I guess not always, but one of the things he would say is like, who says you can't do both? Right? So we would go and do something and I would say like, hey, this is kind of crazy, but like, can we try like running around for a little bit, or let's try like a super fun spin for video. And then I would capture it and kind of get that. Gotcha. So it was really reassuring because in the times that I was having that imposter syndrome of like, they're not going to like me. They're going to leave me a bad review on Yelp forever and I'm going to never be booked again. You know, there was always that reassurance of like, no, you can do it. Like, and if you don't use it, you don't use it, but at least you have it. At least you can capture it. You can test with it. And if you don't give it to them, that's fine. You know, you have that experience, you have that there. And then from there, it snowballed into finding that kind of cinematic style that fit me and fit my team.
So let's dive into the studio photography.
Yeah.
When did you start? How long did you do it? And
Mm-hmm.
then was it something that did you enjoy doing it? Or was it just like, this is my intro to photography?
Yeah. When I started with them, I think I was with them for 2 years or so. I didn't do any studio photography before that. Like I did, but it wasn't great. Like I didn't really know how to use like a strobe light or anything like that. And like I wasn't very familiar with my gear until I started there. And they showed me a lot of really cool things. So I would say like what I learned from there is just the platforms I can use, how to best utilize my camera, and that like you don't need super fancy flash to get the kind of look you want.
Yeah.
I was with them, like I said, for 2 years, so it was really fun doing it. But transitioning from doing that into what I do now it was super hard because I mean that was like my day to day. It was like 9 to 5,
Oh, wow.
pretty much, and then I was editing overnight or editing till 7 or 8. You know, the gear that they provided was super great, and I was super grateful because I learned about all cameras. I'm a Canon user, but boo. But hey, video like Sony, so I will support Sony second, and then but I also learned about Nikon. And other things like that. I started learning about film with them and things like that. So they were super open to like being creative, and things like that. I don't remember the third question. I'm so sorry.
I don't either.
Okay, that's fine.
It's
Hopefully
super
that
okay.
was a good enough.
It's all
but
good.
yeah, I worked with them for a while. I really enjoyed my time there. I just feel like I was shaping into what they wanted me to be rather than who I actually was and who I wanted to become as a photographer. So I think that was the hardest part, was like going there every day and realizing I wasn't capturing for me, I was capturing for them, because I didn't even get to use any of those photos in my portfolio.
What?
Yeah, I would ask them, I'd be like, hey, like I got super creative with this shot, like I really want to use it, and they're like, well, we're not going to use it in ours, but no, you can't use it in your portfolio. So I'm like, okay, it's okay. So I had like, I think I did over like 200 sessions in like one of the years, and I was like, so can I? And they were like, no. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
That's super work. I've definitely had a client, and that when I'm there, I'm shooting for them and them only, and I'm simply just an employee, which definitely understand. I think everybody has to go through it at some point. Hopefully, I mean, some people don't have to, which is good for you. But yeah, it's definitely tough. What was the transition of finding your own work? And like, I know that I had a really hard time with going from being a terrible photographer when I first started to being okay for somebody else.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I want to make good work for other people, but I don't have anything to show them. So how did you build up your portfolio?
Yeah, I actually did a lot of self-portrait work, which is really funny because at the time that I was really building my brand and like my portfolio, COVID like started and I was still in school. So I was like, okay, well, I'm stuck at home. My brother doesn't want to do anything involving photo. My mom definitely doesn't want to unless she knows I'm going to Photoshop her in some way. So I was like, okay, like my family's no, everyone else is COVID quarantined. So I was like, okay, well, I only have myself and I have a rinky dinky tripod and like a Rebel T6, I think. It was like one of the cheapest ones at the time. And so I was like, okay, like let me just start taking pictures of me. So I did different kinds of outfits, and it actually really helped me because now when I direct the clients and direct my models and in the moments, I actually know what it feels like, because I know what it feels like to have a short dress on, a long dress, a suit on, or a pantsuit, you know, like I can direct the guys are a little harder, but I can direct the guys a little better, the girls, because I know what it feels like. But in that time I was building it within myself. My portfolio was literally me, just like my headshots and my close-ups and my posy and my, you know, I wasn't with Lucas at the time, so like, you know, I was even doing like romantic ones by myself. I was like, you know, doing all this stuff. And then when quarantine kind of lifted, I started reaching out to either photographers I knew if they needed a second photographer, or couples I knew that like, hey, I know you guys were quarantined. Do you want a photo session? Like, we'll stay 6 feet apart. I have a zoom lens. We'll be good. And so I started doing that and just complimentary giving out whenever I could, whenever I was open to it, showing them some concepts I had and allowing them to mold that. So kind of doing that first, and then once I had like maybe 4 to 6 pieces of like really good work, that's when I started networking a little more, saying like, hey, like I'm just starting up. I've been quarantined for the last 2 years. Please book me. I have this is all I have to show for it, but I can give this to you for X amount. Like, what's your budget? How can I work with you? And that's what led to like the wedding. That's what led to a lot of the connections I made with the artists, because, you know, now I had their work to show for it, and things like that. So I think that was the best way to do it, was kind of using myself. But even if we weren't in quarantine, I think just connecting with other people and just offering like, hey, I'm going to give you like 10 photos, but I want to capture you doing this. And this is my idea to build my
Gotcha.
portfolio. And being transparent about it too. A lot of couples will be like, yeah, sure, I'll show up. Like free photos, period. Like I'm there. So with that being said, I think aside from using yourself, if you're not in quarantine, definitely reaching out and doing it that way.
Well, very cool. I think I
Yeah.
have one last question.
Go for it.
And it's stumped a couple people, and I don't even know the answer to the question for myself.
I'm scared.
If if you were talking to somebody else or talking to a group of people, what's
Yeah.
one question that you wish somebody would ask you?
Ooh, I should have been prepared for this. One question I want somebody to ask me.
And to give you some context of where
Yeah.
I'm coming from, something that I have struggled with for a while is not knowing when the right time to talk about myself is. And so there are times where I wish people would ask me questions about like my work or the style that I chose or the reason I did this or whatever, you know what I mean? There are certain things that I wish I could get out into the world, but I'm just afraid, not afraid, but I guess that is the term. I fear about coming across a certain way.
Yeah.
And I think that it's cool to give people grace to like, is there a cool shoot that you have that you wish someone would mention or that you wish someone would bring up?
I think for me, it's actually more of like, I wish someone would like stop and ask me why I do photography. I know I just explained to you why. So I guess that kind of defeats what I'm about to say. But, you know, like out in the world, whenever you're networking, the first question is like, how did you do it? What gear do you use?
Yeah.
Like, how did you edit? Do you use Lightroom? Do you use Photoshop? And it's very like, I don't want to say materialistic, but pretty much it's more like, okay, well, how did you get there? Oh, cool. Like, I'm going to follow that or things like that.
Yeah.
But I think with an environment like our world now, everyone's always about like how, and not about why. And that's kind of what pushes me to do what I do, because even when I started photography, even when it was only for vacation stuff, I just wanted people to see the world from my point of view and see the beauty that they have within them, see the baby they're about to carry, see the wedding and the love that they have for each other through my lens, see a handsome, you know, boyfriend like mine on the other side of the camera, or like an amazing, beautiful model girl on the runway showing off an outfit she never thought she'd be able to do. So things like that. I think the why is really lost in the work and in the accounting side and in the financial side and in the imposter syndrome side and like the pressuring side. And so I think one of my answers would probably be like, why do you do photography? What drives you to do photography? And things like that. Because I think that would really push people to step back and be like, I don't, you know, for money, or is it because you actually love what you do, or, you know, what you love capturing? But I think that what you said is also something that I would think about too, is like, you know, whenever you're out there, like, yeah, a lot of the projects that I do capture, like I said before, a lot of events and things like that. And it would be cool to like get asked about like, whoa, that's so cool, you just did that. Like, how did you get in that room and things like that? But at the end of the day, it all roots back to why. So I think that's probably my answer.
Well, awesome.
You stumped me pretty hard there. I was like,
Every
I don't
time.
think off the top either. So that was.
It's all good. Hey, I mean, everything sounded great.
Yeah, perfect.
If you just want to throw like where people can find you into the camera, and then
This one.
yeah.
Hey. But yes, you can find me anywhere. My main place is Instagram, but you can find me on Facebook at Ari Creates Art as well. I also have a Pinterest page with a lot of really great things that I work on, as well as a lot of inspiration. But feel free to message me Instagram. There is also a Linktree link there that you can see all of my contacts, some articles that I've been featured on, and hopefully this podcast whenever it's released. So any socials, Ari Creates Art, all over the world.
Oh.
So yeah.
Awesome. Very much. Thank you
Cool
very much.
beans. Yes,
Appreciate it.
absolutely.